Hello and welcome to Internal Map of Reality, Session 4, Part 2, Filters. We're going to be moving on, looking at examples of filters. In the Part 1, we just looked at a general description of what the filters are and how they function. But now we're going to actually look at some real-life filters. Now, filters are, I would say, a major part of your internal map of reality. And as I've been saying all along, and it probably deserves to be repeated, is that everything that you do in your day-to-day, moment-to-moment existence is in some way indicated in your map. This is true for the great majority of people. They function almost automatically depending on the map. Now, there are people like yourselves who are studying about the internal workings of their map and are building the ability to function above or with, and in some cases without, their internal map of reality. So perhaps our ultimate goal here in this course is to get you to the point where you're not just aware of your map, but you can live with it and begin to use the power of your internal map. And hopefully, with practice, you can develop the skills to live without depending on your map. You can be map independent. So let's look at some specific filters. And here's one that I will be mentioning several times, and it's your timeline, the way you filter your perception of time. And I'll do some bonus content on this. But let's look at one aspect of your timeline filter. It's called your direction finder. Now, with this aspect of your timeline, you are going to be looking at the future to determine what direction you make or what decisions you make. Or you might be someone who looks to your past. Are you someone who drives their car by looking in the rear view mirror a lot or all the time? Well, you can imagine what that's like if you're in a car with someone and the person who's driving is constantly looking in their rear view mirror, like a lot. You might begin to get nervous, like what the heck are they looking at? It's good to look occasionally at what's behind you, but you probably want someone who's looking ahead of the car in front. So this direction filter, a big part of it is identifying whether you are a person who's driving their car, their life, their map, based on what they have seen or have done in the past? Or are you a person who is looking towards the future and aiming their life towards what they want? Now, this is kind of important because there are pluses and minuses to both approach. If you're a person who's constantly looking at the future in terms of assessing how they are doing, well, you might run into this common problem. If you're looking at an object, say the mountains, and you're driving along the prairies, and you're trying to assess your progress by the horizon, well, the horizon is always in front of you. You will never, ever reach the horizon. So some people get frustrated with their life goals if they're constantly looking at the future and trying to measure the progress towards something off in the distance. Conversely, those people who are constantly looking at the past might easily get misdirected. You cannot drive and stay on the road by looking at the past. You might lose your direction if you're constantly focused on what has happened in the past, both negative and positive. This is not a negative or positive type of thing. It's basically you need to be able to look to the past to see how you've progressed and you need to look to the future to see where you need to correct and adjust and aim. Think of an airplane pilot. They are constantly correcting the plane up and down and to the left and back and side in all four dimensions of their traveling, of how they can position the airplane. They don't just lock it in one position, they're constantly adjusting it. Similarly, if you think of someone driving a bicycle, they learn the art of adjusting. Now, the key to being able to adjust is whether or not you are aware of what's happening in the future. So, one aspect of the timeline is identify whether you are fixated on the future or whether you're fixated on the past. One interesting little thing that we can do is I usually get people to point in the direction that they think the future is. Point to where they think the future is and point to where they think the past is. Do you think the future is in front of you and the past is behind you? Or do you think your future is to your right and the past is to the left? Or is it reversed? Do you think your past is on the right and your future is on the left? I've had people who thought their future was really an up arrow towards the sky that pointed up. And I said, point to your future, and they pointed up, which is, that's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with the direction that you think your future is, but it does have an impact on how you're processing your map. And this will be a good bonus topic to talk about that. So right now, you point to where you think your future is. Again, there's no right or wrong with this. It's just what you think. Do you think your future is dead ahead in front of you, or do you think it's to one side or behind you? That obviously indicates where you think your past is. So if you think your future is to your right, you automatically think your past is to your left. If you think your future is to the front, you think your past is to the back. Now, you might think your future is behind you. Well, I haven't really run into that too often. But here's another example of how this can work out. If you think your future is in front of you, it's like you're sitting in a car driving, isn't it? It's like you're looking ahead and you're driving the car towards your future, right? Or if you think your future is towards your left or to your right, it's like you're looking at it on a widescreen projection. Your future is a timeline in front of you that you can look at and evaluate. Now, these two approaches have an impact on how you process information. And we'll be going into this later. But for the time being, figure out for you, where is the future? In front of you, or to your left or right, or actually up above you? Now, just to wrap up this thing on the timeline for now, we want to identify your orientation, and this affects how you plan things. So if you're oriented to be looking ahead of you to the future rather than behind you to the past, this will affect how you set your goals and how you do your planning. You probably heard people in sessions or meetings, or you may even be the type of person who says, well, let's do this such that this does not happen again. Okay? They want to make preparations so things don't happen like they did in the past. Or you might be the type of person or know people who say, listen, if we want to get to this skill level, or we want to be able to accomplish this in the future, these are the things we need to do today to be able to do that tomorrow. Okay? Think about it, and let's move on. Now here's one, the associated filter. We've talked about this a little bit, looking at this. When you are associated, you are in the crowd. You're like one of those people in that group. When you're disassociated, you're looking at it from a distance and you're like in the helicopter looking down. This is a measure of how important something is to you. So when you're listening to someone talk and they're describing something that they're doing or will do or have done, do they describe it such that they are associated, closely attached to it, or are they describing it as if they're looking at it from a distance? This distance is associated with whether or not you are emotionally involved in the content. Okay. There's some other aspects of associated, dissociated when it comes to processing information. Some people will process information such that it's just data. It has no more significance than, a number. Other people will process information in the reality such that they feel compelled to act on it. So information can be just data, or information can be a call to action. This is directly related to how associated you are with the information you're receiving. So as input comes into your reality, if you're very associated, you may actually begin to act on it immediately. If you're disassociated, you may only just observe and record the information and not necessarily act. Here's another one which we see in our lives, the frequency filter. And there's a lot of different dimensions to the frequency filter. So people will repeat things at some frequency level. Maybe they may only repeat something seldom, once in a blue moon. Or they might repeat something frequently to the point where they will do it automatically prior to doing anything. And I think about my mother, that before she went and did anything of any significance, there was a certain posture, there was a certain phrase, there was a certain kind of little routine she did automatically before she did anything of any level of importance. Another example that's coming to my mind is a baseball pitcher. So if you watch a pitcher, they will do something repeatedly the same way every time they throw a pitch, unless it's not an important pitch. If they're just, casually throwing something to the first baseman or throwing something back to the catcher, they may not do their ritual. But if it's an important pitch, if it's a money pitch, they will summon up their ritual and they'll do it every time. Some people become compulsive about their rituals. The classic one is the obsessive compulsive behavior of washing hands. And today, with the foolishness that's going on, people have become obsessed with cleanliness and washing hands and cleaning and scrubbing things. And to the point that it can become a detriment. There are specific oils and protection on your skin. There's antibodies, there's protection, oils and antibodies that protect you from invasion on your skin. If you wash them off, then you no longer have those oils, you no longer have those antibodies. So frequency can be a matter of whether you do something on a ritualistic basis or seldom. This is very important to notice in terms of your perception of how powerful it is. There's another dimension to the frequency filter. You may notice that some people need to be convinced of something several times, and typically it will be a number of times. You might know someone that you have to tell them something 3 or 4 times in different ways before they go, oh, okay, I'll do it. Some people, you just need to say, I think it'd be really great if we did X, Y, and Z. And they'll look at you and go, oh, yeah, that is great. Let's do it. They don't need to have a set number of influential statements to act. So again, in dealing with whether or not you act on something or whether or not you just treat it as data and leave it untouched or unaction, if you're motivated to act, it may be that you haven't had the convincer enough times to act. Let's look at another example of this say you're a salesperson and you're trying to convince someone to buy an item. Now, assuming that you can see them live and in person, you would be really a much better salesman if you could determine whether they have a frequency filter and how many times they need to hear something before they act. And how would you do that? Well, you might try them with something very, 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 very simple, and to see how many times you have to repeat it before they go and actually do it. Now, a really good salesman will ask a person questions and will ask them certain things and will observe whether or not they have to be asked once, twice, 3 times. Some people have to be asked 4 times. Okay? The typical, though, it's 2 or 3. And if you find someone that is a 2 or 3 convincer, they need to be convinced 2 times or 3 times, that's your clue. 1 time isn't going to do it. 2 times isn't going to do it, but that 3rd will. There's some other dimensions in here, but I think it's important. Now, with this frequency one, let's go back to the baseball pitcher. These frequencies, these rituals and repeated behaviors are important to the individual. If you change or make it difficult for the person to do their rituals, you may cause them some issues. Okay? Think about it, and let's leave that one for now, but this is a quite diverse and interesting filter. Here's one that we can observe quite easily, the solution finder. Are you a type of person who finds solutions? Or are you the type of person who finds problems? You might be a helper. You might be the type of person who will, wherever they are, they'll identify the problem and say, oh, that's going to be a problem because this, that, and the other thing, constantly, and, really trying to help. Or you could be the type of helper who will find solutions. You may constantly saying, well, if you did this, you'll be able to get it. Or, the person who's always has their hand up, I want to do this. Now, the problem finder portion of this solution filter can be associated with procrastination. So people who find problems typically will find reasons not to do something. Okay? But this can also work with people who are the solution side of it. They will find a solution as if, it's already been done. Oh, that's already happened. And again, it becomes a way of procrastinating. It becomes an obstruction. So what we'll want to do with this filter, the solution filter, is identify how we use it, identify how we use all the filters, but this one in particular, because if you are trying to achieve something particular in your life, well then, which way would it be best that you're looking and filtering your reality? Are you filtering out the solutions and only seeing the problems? Or are you filtering out the problems and only seeing the solutions? You probably might be more skillful if you can flip back and forth. And this is a little creative game that you can do on your own. You can go and spend a few minutes and identify all the problems with something. Say there's something you want to do. Identify all the problems. What are all the reasons this can't happen? Identify them all. Then flip it and become the solution finder and find out all the ways that you can make this happen. So you can have fun with this filter, and again, this is one that's easy to observe. So that's the exercise 8 that I want you to work on. And again, I'll try to get out a small video on it to focus more on it. But pick one of these filters or find one that you can design on your own and try to identify in yourself how you use these different filters. Okay? Or you can look at people and see if you can see people using these different filters. Look for someone who's using the solution filter. Look for someone who's using the timeline filter. Look for someone using the dissociated association filter, okay? Look for these filters in your day-to-day. Well, that's it for section 2. We're going to go on for section 3 and then looking at how to activate these filters to your advantage, how to spruce up filters and take a filter that may be lackluster and spiff it up and make it a power filter. We're doing that in part 3. So thank you for participating and being here in part 2, and we'll see you in the next session.